This is Carol Stimmel in the Engerati studio at European Utility Week 2015. And right now I'm with Ogi Kavazovic from Opower. Ogi, thank you so much for joining us today.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me. Good to see you again, Carol.
Yeah, you too. I've known you for a couple of years now. We always seem to get around to the topic of big data, which is my favorite topic. And one of the things I've always loved about Opower is your ability to get at the data, but not just get at the data, start to do interesting things with it. So the first thing I kind of want to figure out is, where does Opower stand today with big data, your use of big data prediction and prescription for utilities who've been gathering this data for quite a while using your programs? What does the next step look like?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we've been at this for about 7 years now, working with about 98 utilities. And I think the last statistics my engineers gave me, we have about 58 billion data reads in our database. So it really has been big in terms of volume. And we've been sifting through it, trying to figure out what are the most useful use cases, both for our utility clients as well as for the end consumer experience. And it's been an interesting journey. I think originally there were a lot of hypotheses about what to do with this data. What we've narrowed it down to is a couple of categories. I think, let me start with the consumer side, which is how can we use the data to improve the experience for the end customer, for the utility customer. And the big theme there was, in order to get them to pay attention, we need to display and prove to them that we know what's happening, that we're sort of speaking to them in a very personalized fashion, that the customer journey they may be a part of, or the marketing campaign they may be receiving, is not a one-size-fits all. It's not a generic thing that they can ignore, but specifically for them. And we found through our behavioral science research is, if you can do that, if you can establish that credibility with your customer, then they'll be much more willing to engage. Your click-through rates will be higher, your open rates will be higher, and so on and so forth. I think one of the most interesting projects we've done is what we call load profiles. And what we've had is we have an analytics team look through all of the data across many utilities to find statistically significant groupings of daily profiles. And they came up with 5 profiles that have, there are 5 profiles into which most people fit in. So to give you an example, we have, and we have clever names for them.
Yeah, of course.
We have like a night owl. I think one of them is a coffee drinker, or morning coffee drinker, which is like a long extended morning period, and then they sort of come off in the afternoon. There are 2 peakers, which is a pretty typical one, which is your hair dryer and the whole house is up in the morning, and then everybody goes to work and school, and then everybody kind of comes back at the same time. And it's been great. There aren't dozens or hundreds of them. There are about 4 or 5 these profiles that you can then bucket people into. And if you then take the next step and figure out, well, does a night owl care about different things than what somebody that's at home all day? They're stay-at-home workers as well, home all day, or to different peakers, and you can easily find applications both to sell different products to them and also to give them different money savings and energy saving tips. But besides just the targeting, just demonstrating to them and playing back to them the analysis that we've done and say, look, we think you're a night owl, or we think you come in and come home, you leave home around 9 and come home around 5. I mean, that gives them, that establishes the credibility that I was talking about. Then they believe what you're saying.
Right, yeah.
They know that you basically, it sends the message of, we know what's going on in your home, and we are safeguarding your data, and we want to help you. We want to help you save and turn that into actionable information. So that's been really cool.
Well, let me ask you, it's interesting. I used to work in advanced technologies and telecommunications and broadband. Interestingly enough, we also found 4 or 5 profiles like you're describing, and they rarely changed. Like we are creatures of habit. What I find so interesting about what you're describing is we do know, in the United States, there's nearly 4,000 utilities. And you move to Europe, and we have all kinds of different market constructs and different ways of, that utilities compete, and it's different everywhere. But if you're able to determine profiles in these kind of geographic locales, then you're able to nudge consumers the way you need to nudge them. So in California and Hawaii, we have a lot of PV, so we have this duck curve, so the peak has shifted from the middle of the day to later in the day. So is that why, and what you're looking at is how you can take those profiles and nudge those consumers to behave differently depending on the needs of that particular grid?
Absolutely. I'll give you a perfect example in the competitive markets here in Europe, which is recommend them the best rate based on their historical energy usage profile. You can save a substantially different tariff structure. Makes sense for the different profiles.
Right.
And I was just actually given a presentation, and we talked about the moments that matter in the customer life cycle, and how when the contract ends for a particular customer, the utility, the competition and the utility both come in with a new rate offer to try to either retain the customer or steal them away. And there's an interesting dynamic where if it's an existing customer for you, and you wait until the contract expires to tell them that they could have been on a better rate and have been saving money the whole time, the customer, that will actually backfire, and the customer will be upset as one would. And so it's a perfect example when we work with competitive utilities to say, look, there are about 5 profiles. You should have 4 or 5 tariffs that match these profiles, and you should be very proactive of pushing these customers into the optimal rate and tariff for them. So the benefit is obviously customer loyalty and that sort of proactive advice, and not waiting for the customer to ask, but being proactively helping them save. Is exactly what the emerging customer strategy seems to be.
So this is a new. You do, Opower does behavioral energy efficiency, has done it for 7 years, and as measurably does it well. I mean, I think one of the first studies on behavioral energy efficiency came out of SMUD, and it was, you weren't even Opower then, you were Simple Energy.
Positive Energy.
Positive Energy, yeah. So,
USA.
Right. So, things have changed, and so, but here you're taking kind of your core capabilities, which is meeting a customer where they are at a personal level, building credibility and trust, and then moving them into a more positive experience with their utility or energy provider.
Yeah, exactly.
So great, that's awesome. I wish we had more time to talk, because that sounds really simple, but I know there's a lot going on behind there in terms of models and analytics, and with that preponderance of data, you have a lot to explore.
And not just the analytics, but then converting those insights into a new experience, into a new customer experience, is very difficult for a lot of utilities because of the legacy IT systems, because there are many different systems at play. And so it all sounds good in theory. Say, look, this should be your new billing journey based on the analytics that we've done, and here's what it should look like. But then implementing that, best case scenarios, 2 to 3 years.
Right.
For a utility that's got their IT house in order, longer for some utilities that have legacy systems that are really well entrenched. And so we've been able to really help out, one of the key value propositions of Opower these days, because we're in the cloud, that we can sidestep a lot of those internal IT issues. And and now that SaaS solutions are much more accepted, that the security issues have been, and privacy issues around providing data to a vendor has been mostly resolved, and it's not.
Well, you could even argue it's more secure.
It's more secure, and so that's absolutely right. But it took the industry a couple of years to get comfortable with these facts, and now that I think we're largely over that hurdle, we're able to present not only the vision for what the end consumer journey should look like, but then also pair that with a 6 to 9 month timeline, which if you look at you say that to a VP at a utility, they just won't even believe you.
Right.
The lowest denomination is a couple of years, right? And that's really exciting. And so having, not having a vision, having a theoretical business case, but being able to actually demonstrate results within 6 to 9 months. We've always been oriented this way as a company. to put something in market and then demonstrate provable and measurable results. And so we've kept that orientation as we went on to all of our products.
Yeah, well, return on investment matters.
It does, and at the end of the day, you may be able to make a sale without that sort of proof to begin with, but the customer will not renew down the line. So ultimately, it always matters, and you should be able to measure your impact every time.
Well, Ogi, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, it was fun. I wish we had more time. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's nice to see you again.
Yeah.
And this is Carol Stimmel in the Engerati studio, talking to Ogi Kavazovic from Opower. And European Utility Week 2015 continues. Thank you.